somewhere in the Mediterranean. In the 1980s, a graduate student was running a fairly ordinary experiment. He'd collected some tiny jellyfish polyps, kept them in a jar, and was simply waiting for them to grow up and reproduce the way jellyfish always do. Instead, something happened that made no biological sense. The jellyfish didn't die. They didn't just reproduce. They went backward. Fully grown adults sitting in that jar quietly turned themselves back into babies, not once, over and over, whenever things got hard. Scientists would spend the next 30 years trying to understand what they'd actually found. And what they eventually confirmed is still, to this day, one of the strangest sentences in all of biology. There is an animal on Earth that may not have to die of old age at all. The animal is called Turritopsis dohrnii, and it was actually first described back in 1883. For over 100 years, it just sat in scientific records as one more small, unremarkable jellyfish species smaller than your pinky fingernail, with a nearly transparent body and a small, bright red stomach visible right through it. Nobody thought there was anything special about it. Then, in the late 1980s, a student named Christian Sommer was studying a colony of these jellyfish for an entirely different reason. He wasn't looking for immortality, he was just trying to understand their basic life cycle. But every time his jellyfish were stressed, injured, or running low on food, they did something no adult animal was supposed to be able to do. Here's what a normal jellyfish life cycle looks like. It starts as a tiny larva drifting through the water. That larva settles onto a rock or the seafloor and grows into a polyp, a small plant-like stationary form. The polyp eventually buds off young jellyfish called medusae, which swim away, mature, reproduce, and eventually die. That's the life cycle every single other jellyfish on Earth follows. Start to finish, once. Turritopsis dohrnii follows it too. Right up until the part where it's supposed to die. When one of these jellyfish is damaged, starved, or simply growing old, instead of dying, its body starts folding in on itself. It stops swimming. It pulls in its tentacles, it sinks to the bottom. At this point, if you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd assume you were watching an animal die, but over the next day or two, that shrunken little blob does something remarkable. Its own fully grown, fully specialized cells begin changing into completely different types of cells, not dying and not simply healing. Actually converting from one identity into another. Scientists call this transdifferentiation, and outside of this species, it's almost never seen happening naturally in a fully mature animal. Within about a day or two, that blob of transformed cells settles into a new form entirely, a polyp. The same early life stage the jellyfish started out as years earlier. From there, it does what any young polyp does. It grows, it buds, and eventually it releases new, free-swimming medusae. Here's the detail that makes this genuinely different from ordinary regeneration. Those new medusae aren't new individuals. Genetically, they're identical to the jellyfish that supposedly just died. It didn't produce offspring to carry its genes forward. It became its own offspring. Picture a fully grown adult, under enough stress or injury, simply reverting back into a small child. Then growing up all over again as the exact same person. That's roughly the scale of what this animal is doing to its own body. And there's nothing. So far, that seems to stop it from doing this again and again. Before this goes any further, it's worth being honest about something, Turritopsis. Dohrnii is not invincible. If a fish or a sea turtle eats it, it dies, the same as any other jellyfish, if it's in the wrong place at the wrong time. Disease, predation, and physical destruction can all still end its life completely. Reverting to a polyp only works if enough of its body, particularly its outer layer and part of its internal canal system, survives the process largely intact. So this isn't invincibility. It's something more specific. And in some ways more interesting, this animal appears to have no built-in aging process at all. Most living things have some kind of internal clock cells, accumulate damage, tissues wear down, systems fail, and eventually the whole organism dies of simply being old. Even if nothing else ever goes wrong, Turritopsis dohrnii is one of the only known animals where that clock doesn't seem to be running left in a safe, stable environment. With nothing hunting it and nothing going wrong, there's currently no known reason it would ever die of age alone. That's not survival. That's the actual absence of a countdown most other life on Earth is quietly running. It helps to understand just how unusual this ability is. Even among animals already famous for regeneration, plenty of animals can regrow damaged parts of themselves. A newt can regrow a lens in its eye. A starfish can regrow an entire arm. A salamander can regrow a limb. But those are all partial repairs. A damaged piece is replaced, while the rest of the animal continues aging forward, exactly like anything else. What Turritopsis dohrnii does is different in kind, not just in degree. It's not repairing a damaged section of an adult body, it is dismantling its entire adult body and reconstructing an earlier version of itself from the ground up. As far as scientists currently know, no other animal on Earth is confirmed to do this as a fully mature adult and repeat it indefinitely. A few closely related Turritopsis species can perform something similar, but usually only while they're still young. Once they reach full maturity, most of them lose the ability entirely. Turritopsis dohrnii simply never loses it. For a long time, this was where the story stopped. Scientists knew what was happening, they didn't know how. That's slowly starting to change. Researchers studying this jellyfish's genetics have found that certain genes tied to DNA repair and to protecting the ends of chromosomes become highly active, specifically during the reversal process, right, when the animal is in that in-between, unformed stage between medusa and polyp. Even more strikingly, some of the same genes that scientists use in laboratories to turn an ordinary adult human skin cell back into a stem cell, the genes behind Nobel Prize-winning work in stem cell science, appear to have close relatives doing similar work inside this jellyfish. Naturally, on their own, with no lab involved at all. In other words, one of the most extraordinary tools in modern regenerative medicine may already have a working, real-world version of itself quietly running inside an animal smaller than a fingernail, off the coast of Italy right now. This is exactly why research institutions around the world keep coming back to this species, even though it's almost impossibly small and difficult to study. Aging at its core is a cellular problem. Damage accumulates faster than it can be repaired, and eventually the system fails. Turritopsis dohrnii appears to have found a way to simply reset that entire equation at the cellular level, using tools that may not be nearly as biologically foreign to us as they first seem. Nobody is claiming a jellyfish is about to hand humanity a cure for aging. That's not where this research is. But understanding exactly how this animal repairs and reorganizes its own DNA under stress is already shaping real conversations in the science of human aging and regenerative medicine. Sometimes the most important experiment in a lab isn't the one scientists designed, it's the tiny, overlooked animal that had already solved the problem. Quietly, millions of years before anyone thought to ask the question, there's one more strange twist to this animal's story, and it has nothing to do with aging at all. Turritopsis dohrnii was originally native to the Mediterranean. Today, it's been found in oceans almost everywhere in the world. It didn't spread on its own power. It hitchhiked, most likely inside the ballast water that large cargo ships take on and release as they travel between ports. Researchers have since found genetically near-identical populations of this jellyfish scattered across entirely different oceans, thousands of miles apart. An animal that already refuses to die of old age has also quietly ridden global shipping routes into becoming one of the most widely distributed jellyfish species on the planet. Whether that's remarkable or slightly concerning probably depends on which ecosystem you happen to be standing in. Today, small numbers of these jellyfish are kept and studied in labs around the world, including by researchers who have maintained live colonies for years, specifically to watch this cycle happen, again and again, under controlled conditions. One Japanese biologist who has cultured them for decades describes it simply, it's like watching a butterfly turn back into a caterpillar, repeatedly, and every time it happens, it raises the same question all over again. If a jellyfish barely visible to the naked eye can rewrite its own aging process this completely, what exactly is stopping every other animal on Earth from doing the same thing? Right now, nobody has a complete answer. Most living things are headed one direction, forward, toward age, toward decline, eventually toward an ending. Turritopsis dohrnii is one of the only confirmed cases where that direction isn't fixed. Given enough stress and enough of its body still intact, it can simply choose to start over. Not metaphorically. Cell by cell, identity by identity. All the way back to its own childhood. It can still be eaten, it can still be destroyed, but left alone, there may be no clock counting down inside it at all. That single, unremarkable-looking jellyfish in a Mediterranean lab jar didn't just surprise a graduate student in the 1980s. It quietly rewrote what scientists thought they knew about the one rule every living thing was supposed to follow. If animals that break the rules of biology are your thing, subscribe. There are more of these stories than you'd think.